Hello everyone, welcome back to Russell's Movie Reviews, the show where I review stuff from my collection that either you guys pick out or I pick out that are mostly pretty good and maybe, one of the best movies of all time. But then you get some movies that are just straight up garbage or one of the worst movies of all time and should remain in the depths of hell. Um, Now today we're going to be continuing on with the Rambo franchise with the second installment, which is Rambo First Blood Part 2, released on May 22nd of 1985 with a budget of $44 million. Domestically, it made $150 million, and worldwide, it made $300.4 million. So this was an overwhelming success. And this was directed by George P. Cosmatos, who would actually later on would go and do Tombstone with Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer. Um, and some other films, but I think his you know, most identifiable work would be Rambo: First Blood Part 2 and Tombstone. Um, Now, compared to the first film, this has a lot more action in it, so this should be better, but honestly, it's a little. For me personally, it's a little bit. I mean, I still like the movie. It's not one of the worst movies of all time, but compared to, the almost masterpiece that is First Blood, this really kind of um is kind of dull in comparison. I'm not saying this is a bad movie, not at all. But um it was just the fact that um I don't really know. It's just this should have like all the stuff that should make this a great movie. And it does, but compared to like the first movie, it isn't as good. Um, this is still way better than stuff like Jaws: The Revenge or Star Trek Into Darkness. But so far, it's out of the two Rambo movies I have watched so far, this is so far my least favorite. Um, anyways, let's get on to that plot. So John Rambo, played by once again Sylvester Stallone, is doing hard time in jail when his former boss, uh, Colonel Troutman, played by again Richard Crenna, offers him a deal. If Rambo travels to Vietnam to try and find the American prisoners of war, his criminal record will be expunged. Rambo takes the assignment and agrees not to get involved with in any of the action. However, when his Vietnamese lover Chow Bui Bay, I'm not sure how you say that, played by Julia Nixon, is killed by Thailand forces, Rambo forgets his promise and takes matters into his own hands. Now, just from the sound of the plot, you could tell that this is a way more action movie than First Blood, and it certainly is. Um, Certainly it has a lot more action than the first movie. I could say that much, but in terms of um, like expanding Rainbow's character, it really doesn't. Um, that said, this is a fun action movie. If I wasn't watching this as a part of the Rambo series, I would say this is probably one of the better '80s action movies compared to all of you know the hundreds of action movies that we got during the '80s. This is probably one of the better kind of I should say generic muscle bound hero kind of films, kind of going along with, like Terminator 1 and 2. Yes, I know Terminator 2 did technically come out in 91, but that's still technically the 80s and 90s action heroes. So, like, going on the lines of Terminator 1 and 2, the Rambo films, uh, the generic muscle bound heroes. I think this is like kind of what set it, because this came out in '85. Um, I guess Terminator kind of did it first, but with that film, Arnie was technically the bad guy, but it still kind of started it. First, Rambo 2 is like was the movie that kind of set it, where it's like, okay, this is everything that you basically need in an action movie. Go, just do whatever you want to do. And I think for an action movie from the mid '80s, it's not bad. But as a part of the Rambo franchise, I think it's pretty generic. Um, but let's get on to the cast before start talking too much crap about this movie, because there is actually a lot of stuff I do like about this movie. Um, but I'll talk about that later. So we obviously have, of course, Sylvester Stallone as John Rambo once again. Um, he, I think this is the movie that kind of just set him as, you know, isn't taking any crap from anyone. I'm going to set everything straight. Um, but I think as trying to expand his character a bit, I think it really kind of doesn't do that. Granted, I love seeing Rambo, blowing stuff up with or like shooting bad guys with the, big guns and stuff, and blowing stuff up with the bow, which is actually the first appearance of the bow in this film, and obviously the knife returns. But in terms of like trying to like expand his character a bit, it doesn't really do that. Um, which I think is kind of a shame. Thankfully, in Rambo 3, they kind of got back to kind of, expanding on his character a bit, which I do really like a lot. Um, but in this movie, they just don't really do anything with him. Except for saying, hey, we're going to have you dropped in basically Thailand, and we're basically going to have you start shooting everything. Not immediately, because for about, I would say, the first hour of the movie, which is actually a majority of the movie, he doesn't really do anything. Yeah, near the hour mark, yeah, he starts killing people a bit, but he doesn't really do anything. It's only after when he escapes his torture sesh from the Russians, that's when it's like, okay, this is this is action movie. Like, we gotta put the action in there, and it certainly does. Because I would say this is probably in this film has some of the more iconic action moments from the '80s and '90s. It's from this film. Um, but um, yeah, like he doesn't really take part like in the action until I think when Cho is killed. I think that's like kind of like I said in the first blood review, like something happens to him and then he kind of ticks and then he goes. That's kind of the same in this movie, but apparently in this movie, since it's actually someone who he really cares about, it apparently means that he's just actually gonna blow up a whole bunch of stuff, and the action in this movie does not let you down, because this movie, oh my god, the action scenes in this movie are fantastic. The pyrotechnics in this movie are great. Um, with the big kind of fireballs in this movie, especially when he jumps from the cliff after the the second command, like the Russian second in command, like drops this like bomb and it just blows up basically the whole mountain. I think that is probably one of the best fireballs in all of '80s. Um, like all in '80s action movies. Kind of going maybe on like not like I think this fireball is slightly above the thing fireball at the end, but I'll talk about that when I get to the thing. which I will be doing in this year's uh, October season. Um, we have uh, Julia Nixon as Cho Boy Bao Boy, um, who is basically the love interest for Rambo, who who also helps him not only try and like see like the camp and stuff, but also helps him in the escape the torture scene, which I think is a really like nice touch. Don't make Rambo just escape from everything he's in. You know, have someone else help him, which I think they do very well in this movie. Um, but I think at the time some people kind of thought like, oh, like ladies, they don't do anything like, but you know, obviously now with like kind of, you know, well actually even at the time people were kind of questioning that because you know we had by this point we had the first Terminator movie and you know Lindo Hamilton and you know in that film you know destroyed the Terminator at the end. It was you know saying like hey you know women can also do stuff too and also not be like the final girl who is like just stalling you know the villain of the movie until you know something happens. You know, let the women get in the action, which is what you know they really emphasize in both the Terminator and Rambo: First Blood Part Two. And she does great in the movie. I just really think that um like I only saw this film like once or twice before you know watching it again for this review. And to be completely honest, I could tell when she was going to die. Um, you know, like I thought like at first she's like okay she's gonna be like a side character that's gonna last out for the whole movie, and then once she mentions that like she doesn't want to be in Thailand anymore, she wants to go to America. That's like okay, that's like saying like a side like a male sidekick to the main hero in the beginning of an action movie has a wife and a kid. That's just saying okay you're going to die at some point. That's basically signing your own death sentence. And um it's not that the death is bad. I just like that, you know, if they were going to go with the death, either I was thinking either don't go with the death at all, or if you do it, kind of don't really. I mean, yeah, like if you're probably first watching this, you're gonna be like, no, not you know her, but you know after subsequent repeats, you know, you're like, I mean, yeah, you're obviously gonna know, like she's going to die. I guess spoilers already, even though I forgot to mention it. But I think kind of layer it a bit. Like, don't kind of just say like, "Hey, I want to do this," and it's like, okay, well, now you're going to die because you literally said like the one out of two things that gets you killed in an action movie. Um, but I think, um, you know, I think the hints at her death, I think, should have been played a lot better, cause for me, I don't know about anyone else, but for me personally, her death was kind of anticlimactic. Like, they have kind of a makeout session, and she's like, well, will you bring me back to America? And he goes, yes. They literally walk two steps, and then she gets gunned down. And it's like, wait it out a bit. Like, maybe let him go, let both of them go to the camp, like, back to the camp to try and save them and then had her die there and like have her like kind of like die in the line of duty. But they literally walk two steps into the bright sunlight and she gets gunned down by you know the Thailand like a couple of Thailand guys, and it's just like well, I just wish that your death was handled a lot better, cause now you're dead and it's just kind of anticlimactic, and I just feel really sad now. Um, and then obviously we have Richard Crenna as uh, Colonel Troutman, and he's great as usual. As I think they give him like a couple more lines of dialogue of sympathy dialogue where it's like Rambo like at least he's kind of like not per se, but he's kind of like the Mitch character from the first movie. Like especially the fact that they're both really close friends. But Mitch in the first movie is kind of just like, what's maybe we should kind of stop. Maybe give him some time to breathe or something. And all the cops are like, no. It's kind of the same thing that's played out in this movie. Like, Rambo gets one of the American, guys one of the American prisoners that was trapped there. Um, and he goes up to the extraction point. Murdoch overhears they that he has an American, one of them, and I don't know exactly what he intended on doing, but he says pull out, to make him kind of like a douche. Which might as well mention now Charles Napier as Murdoch, who is I wouldn't say a per se villain. He's kind of just the film's douche, I would say, because technically the main villain is Profswowski, who is played by Steven Burkoff. Um, he seems to be playing a lot of Russian bad guys in 80s films. Um, but but yeah, Murdoch just kind of is just like the movie's douche. He says pull out, and like Troutman's like, no, we gotta go and help him. And then one of these says like pulls like a pistol on him and says, like, you ain't going to help him. And Erickson, played by the fantastic Martin Kove, who is most well known for his role as Kreese in the Karate Kid films and in Cobra Kai. But yeah, he plays Erickson in this movie, and he pulls out, and then Rambo kind of gets tortured, and you're just like, well, now I just want your ass to get kicked, because now you literally like just pissed him off even more, and now he's going to get you now. And it's just that one line when after they electrocute him, he's on the radio, and he goes my favorite line in the whole movie is when he goes Murdoch, and the lightning strikes, and he just squeezes it, and he goes, I'm coming for you. And then the look on Murdoch's face literally says, oh shit, I'm a dead man. Like, that's the face that you do not only after someone scares you, but you shit yourself. Because then you're just like, okay, Murdoch, he dead. And then Rainbow, comes back out, and then Cho helps him, and they escape. But, yeah. And then I obviously mentioned Martin Kove and Steven Burkoff. We also have George Chang as Tay, who is basically the Thailand commander who puts him, I believe, in a pool of pig crap as a way of torture to say, hey, why'd you come here? And then obviously the Russians come in. But yeah, like, Profsowski is the villain, but at least he's, like, yeah, he electrocutes him, but he isn't going to put him in a pile of shit, basically. And he even says, like, when, he's cleaned up and he's, like, trying to interrogate him, he says that I respect you. I respect that, like, what you do, and, if I was in your position, I would do the same thing. Tay just beats the crap out of him and then sits him down in a chair and says, talk. And then so it's like, like now just want you to die. And he gets what he's coming when he sees Rambo, and then Rambo just pulls out the bow, which is probably the most iconic weapon that Rambo has ever used, besides like the knife, is the bow. And so he takes out the bow with the explosive tipped arrow and just aims it at him. Tay starts running away, and then tries to shoot him with a pistol after you already missed like all your shots with an AK-47. You really think a pistol is gonna do anything? And then, he misses a couple times, and then he just launches the arrow, and then hits, explodes. Probably, I'm just gonna say right now, that's my first favorite scene, because I'm just like, yeah, you got what you got coming. Because you're just a straight up douchebag. You deserve to die, and he obviously got what he was, you know, what, like, he deserved. Um, and then we have Voya Goric. I'm most likely butchered that name, as Yushin, who is basically the Russian like bodyguard, like basically the brute. You have like the main villain who really doesn't do anything, and then you have the brute that the main character fights to get to the villain. Um, and then he Rambo fights him in the helicopter, and he flies out, which I love that, like, after he kills the brute, the pilot, he goes to, like, he takes out his knife and he goes up to the pilot just opens up the door and jumps out, just like, see ya, I ain't getting killed by your knives. I ain't risking it. And I always laugh at that moment, because I'm just like, well, that you basically just committed suicide. It's either you get stabbed by the knife, or you turn into a pancake on the floor. Yeah. So I always laugh at that moment, because I'm like, you're dead either way. And so he just took the, I guess, safer option, I guess. Really gotta mute my phone when I start doing videos. And so yes, I already mentioned my first favorite scene, which is Rambo killing Tay with the bow and arrow. I think my second favorite scene is when, after he commandeers the helicopter, he just goes to the base that he originally went to and was basically held up in the whole movie. He just goes there in the helicopter and just blows the shit out of it. He just like goes in with RPG, like with the machine guns and the rockets, and he just starts blowing it up and starts killing all of the soldiers. And I'm like, yes, that's how you do an action movie. And then, he goes in, rescues the um the American prisoners, and then they fly off, and then you have, I assume, the final confrontation with Popsowski, because I don't know if that's actually him in the helicopter at the end that's chasing after Rambo's helicopter. I'm pretty sure it is, because that's like my only explanation about who that is that that's just Popsowski trying to kill Rambo. Because like after, like, I think when Rambo escapes, I'm assuming besides the helicopter chase, if that's him, he basically just disappears. I don't know if he's killed in when like in the scene when Cho helps Rambo escape, or if he's just in the helicopter chasing Rambo at the end. I'm assuming that's him at the end. So, and then, he it goes on for this, like, I believe, like 3 minute chase, like 2 3 minute chase, and then it kind of clips the helicopter and it goes down. It doesn't explode, obviously, because it's Rambo's. It's Rambo's helicopter, so it just lands. And then he just comes up stupidly really close up to the helicopter. See, don't, might as well stand back a bit, you know. But no, go really up close, like not like right up to it, but like kind of close to the helicopter. And of course, Rambo just pops up with an RPG and just blows the helicopter up. Like, that's what you get, you idiot. Like, of course you don't go up right up to Rambo's helicopter, because of course he's not dead. He's gonna come out with a freaking RPG and just blow you up. There's a boom. Um, but I will admit that sequence is pretty cool. So even that scene, I'm just like, you idiot, you idiot. But I'm not, and then I'm just like, well, it doesn't really matter anyway because it just preceded a very awesome action sequence. So I don't really care. It's still awesome. And I guess my third favorite scene, which is technically comes before the rocket, the helicopter chase, is him at the other kind of village. When the Russians and the Thailand people are chasing him, he traps the whole bunch of people in the cornfield, and then takes the bow and arrow, and then just like, aims it back, and just shoots it at all the three cars that they came in, and so basically they have nowhere to go, and then he goes and has the confrontation. Actually, that scene is actually before when he kills Ty. So yeah, but and then my final favorite sequence, this is probably my favorite sequence in the whole movie, is the confrontation between John Rambo and Murdoch. Because I'm like, okay, here it comes. And then even before he walks through the door, he meets up with Erickson. He's like, I'm so happy to see you. And he just basically punches him in the nuts and punches him in the face. Just like, yeah, that's what you get for leaving him. And then he just walks in, starts shooting all the like the computer stuff, and just walks in. And like, I never really trusted what Murdoch was saying in the scene because it was like, I was just, I got the orders. I was just going it out, and you can see his shirt, like his sweat is like all the way up to like down here, of the shirt, and like he's like beating sweat. So I'm like, you're lying. Because he heard that Rambo was coming, and so he just goes into his office, and then Trauman just says, "Yeah, what are you doing? Go and help him." And then obviously he doesn't kill him, obviously, but he basically says like, don't screw with me, or else the next time will be the last time you see me. And it's chilling, and then he just walks out, and then that's the end of the movie. Um, so my fun fact I have for this movie is, did you know that this is the only Rambo movie that was nominated for an Oscar? So yeah, surprisingly, this is the only Rambo movie that was actually nominated for an Oscar in 1986 for Best Sound Effects Editing. I don't think it won. I'm not sure. Um, I think it might have lost out to another movie. But I'm like, okay, this is the only movie that was actually nominated for an Oscar. You know, especially the fact that Rambo and Sylvester Stallone actually won an Oscar for, I believe, well, not only best screenplay, I believe for best film as well in 1976 for the first Rocky movie. And then, but it's very interesting that this film was actually nominated for an Oscar. And I got to talk about the composer. You know, the fantastic Jerry Goldsmith returns for this movie, and I think this was actually, yeah, this is the first, like, technically the Rambo theme is kind of like the somber piece that we hear in the first movie. Um, but the Rambo theme itself was actually from the second movie, cause even though I prefer First Blood score over the First Blood Part 2 score, this film score is a lot more actiony, and it's supposed to be because, obviously it's supposed to be an action movie, compared to the more somber tone of the original. But I think, honestly, the more somber tone of the first film kind of works a lot more better as by itself than First Blood Part 2. But as a whole, I think First Blood Part 2 has the better soundtrack. Especially when you listen to it with the movie. Excluding The Fiend, though. Because, like, you can literally play that anywhere. But, um, by itself, I think the score for this film is a little bit lackluster, but, I think, in terms of listening along with the movie, I think the score is fantastic. Um, I do recommend getting the score if you are a diehard Jerry Goldsmith fan, if you are a Rambo fan. Um, Not as good as the First Blood score, but I personally say it's still a very good score. It's not bad per se. So yeah, that was my review of First Blood Part 2. I think this film is personally not as good as the first one, but um it's certainly a very good Rambo movie. Um and you know, I think anyone who wants to watch a generic Rambo action film, I think they should watch this. Cuz the other film like First Blood and the films after this kind of got more plot heavy per se. I think this film is the film that you just want to sit down on a Sunday afternoon if you want to watch a generic 80s action movie with popcorn and a soda. I think this is the film for you. So I'm going to give this film a 7 out of 10. It's um not as good as First Blood, obviously not, but I still think this is a very enjoyable movie. All the problems I did say at the beginning of the movie, they still hold up, but that doesn't really take away from how good this movie is. Um, and I think everyone should watch this if you are wanting to get into the 80s action genre. I think the Rambo series should be a good start. So yeah, guys, that was my review of Rambo First Blood Part 2. Stay tuned for tomorrow where I'm going to be reviewing the very generic third installment of the Rambo franchise, Rambo 3. Which, when I actually watched this in full for the first time a couple years ago, I thought this was actually slightly better than Rambo First Blood Part 2. Does that opinion still hold up? I guess we'll find out tomorrow with my review of Rambo 3. Mm. Um, I do remember a lot more stuff from Rambo 3 than from First Blood Part 2 per se. But I guess we'll find out my opinion on the film tomorrow on Rambo 3. So stay tuned for tomorrow, guys, where I'm going to be talking about Rambo 3. And have a great day, everyone. Live long and prosper. Out.